live and ready to go?
There we go, Chair. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this joint scrutiny meeting of economy, residents and communities combined with the learning and skills scrutiny committees. Today, Thursday, the 26th of September. Getting straight into our agenda, do we have any apologies, please, for today?
I've apologies from Councillor Gwynfor Thomas. Chair, I haven't received any other apologies.
Thank you very much. Item 2, disclosures of interest. So this is to receive any disclosures of interest by members relating to items to be considered in this meeting. I'll take a silence to be there are no disclosures, but please declare now if you have any. No, good. Item 3 is declaration of party whips, and this is to receive disclosures of prohibited party whips which a member has been given in relation to the meeting in accordance with section 78.3 of the Local Government Measure 2011. So again, I'm going to take silence and nobody's waving their hands to mean there are none. So let's get straight into the agenda item, which is the home to school transport policy and reports. And we're here on page 2 of our full agenda pack. Now we've got the report here from officers and we've got the appendix, which is the policy itself or proposed policy. So I'm going to suggest that we work through the report from officers, starting at number 1, which is the purpose of this report and the purpose of this policy. So members, over to you. I want concise and clear questions, please. And I'm going to start with Councillor Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the two objectives given for the policy were to increase the clarity of the school transport and admissions policy, and to give greater flexibility. So the first thing was that the admissions policy still refers to the nearest suitable or catchment school. So given that the transport policy is now referring to only to the catchment school, that I think is still confusing. And secondly, the flexibility, the policy itself doesn't allow for any greater flexibility. If anything, it's probably less. So although that there is the option for discretion outside the policy, that is definitely not the same as having flexibility within the policy. Thank you.
Okay, and I can see Sarah Corbell has got her hand up. So do you want to come in there, Sarah, and give us some clarity there?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Chair. And it was specifically around the reference to the admissions policy, if that's okay.
Yep.
So, we would only amend the reference in the admissions policy as and when the approval for the amendment to the transport policy had been given. So the current copy references the transport policy as it stands today, and the admissions policy or booklet goes through annual consultation with schools and governing bodies, etc.
So it's a bit of a chicken and an egg situation that one is waiting on the other.
We would update with any change to the transport policy.
So can I come in with a question there to officers? Can you point out to us what is the key change in this school transport policy compared to what was previous? So who would, John, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, happy to answer. The wording in the current policy refers to nearest suitable or catchment school. We feel that's confusing because is it your nearest or is it your catchment and what's suitable? So what we've attempted to do in this policy is to align how the schools use their catchment areas on the oversubscription basis to describe to parents, if you live in this area, this is the primary school we will transport you to if you're more than 2 miles away, or this is the secondary school that we will transport you to if you're more than 3 miles away. That is the change. So effectively, the biggest change is we've removed nearest suitable to catchment school. That's the fundamental change in this policy.
Lovely, thank you. I think that explains it really well. And for me, that's the crux of the matter, that really we've changed a couple of tiny words, but that has implications that we need to explore here for our residents, doesn't it? So Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If my understanding is right, Sarah's just said that Lucy's just said that the admission policy still includes nearest or catchment school. And we've just gone out, I understand we're now in the period when parents can apply for places for the secondary sector for September 25. We're now looking at a home to school transport policy that will be implemented from September 25. So they're going to be against each other. We haven't got the same, we won't have the same wording then in the two policies for the same year.
Sarah, can you come back and clarify that for us?
Well, it's more of a statement, really.
But it's an important point, is it? So, Sarah, you said that if this policy is adopted now, then the wording in the admissions policy will also change. But when will that change, and what's the process for that?
We can only change to the 26-27 year, can't it?
Yeah. So for 1 year, they will still be out of line.
Yeah. So there's no rush to do this policy.
In terms of the dates for the admissions rounds, they are set as part of the annual consultation. So they were set earlier in the year. So
yeah, but the point I'm making, Sarah, is we've got an admission policy document now saying that for September 25, you'll be transported to your closest or catchment school. And we're now considering a transport policy that will contradict that. Therefore, I would propose we look at this for implementation in September 26.
Which would align with the admissions policy.
I'm not sure whether Clive's got any views on that.
Is Clive in the room? Oh, yeah. Hello, Clive. Welcome. Is there a legal view on that status?
I think that we've historically had discrepancies between the transport policy and admissions policy. I think that there will be a continuing discrepancy for a 12-month period, but the transport policy will be applied. So I think that it's unfortunate. Had the general election not intervened, I think the two would have.
That's irrelevant. Sorry, Clive, I'm going to interrupt you there. That bit's irrelevant now. The point with that time has passed. I think a very good point has been made there that we will have a 12-month period in which the two policies are not aligned, but we have an opportunity to change both policies to start them both on the same date. So I think Gareth's question is why can't we do that? Is there any reason why we can't do that?
Well, insofar as this scrutiny committee is concerned, they can make a recommendation to that effect, but of course it is Cabinet that makes the decision. Yes.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you, Clive. Okay, Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of things. Just, I know we all feel it, and there's pressure on organising meetings and calendars, but this was a last-minute meeting call with a massive 110 pages to read, so just airing frustration here. But my point is, are we really confident that with the suggested changes, we're still going to be complacent with the learner measure travel Wales Act? Because I read it in the report that certain people had picked up, well, isn't that against the Act? And I've done my best bit of homework today that I can do. And the Learner Travel Wales Measure 2008 is a legally binding on local authorities of Wales, sets out specific duties that local authorities must follow to ensure safe and suitable transport for learners. And then it goes on to say in section 3.6, the term nearest suitable school refers to the closest school that meets the educational needs of the charity, and the local authority must provide transport to the nearest suitable school. So not only are we going to be out of line with our own policy, if we change in the manner that we're suggesting, we're actually going to be going against a legally binding act. And I can't quite understand how we're going to do that.
Councillor Gary, either John or I can respond to this. Understand what you say, but the guidance from Welsh Government is clear. And the guidance says that at 1.39 in the guidance, local authorities need to consider the suitability of the school when deciding if the placement is appropriate for a learner. Deciding which suitable school is the learner's nearest is a matter for the local authority. So we are totally and utterly compliant with Welsh Government guidance.
I think,
With the
Clive, you mean
guidance, but
deciding.
are we compliant
sorry,
with the Act? Sorry.
Sorry, Gary, I just want to interrupt because I think, Clive, there you had, I think you missaid what you meant then. You said that it's for the local authority to decide which school is nearest. Well, that's a geographical fact, which school is the nearest. Surely you mean that it's up to the local authority to decide which school is most suitable.
I was just quoting from the guidance, Councillor Angela.
So the guidance says
guidance
that
does
the
say
local
that.
authority can choose which school is the nearest.
Correct. That's what the guidance says, Councillor Angela.
Golly,
I was just
bonkers,
quoting
isn't
from
it?
the guidance.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just wanted to check you'd said that correct. Sorry, Gary, coming back to you.
Yeah, no, it was just, I get the guidance is there, Clive, absolutely. But the Act is very clear in what it says. And surely the guidance doesn't supersede the Act unless it's a ministerial statement. And I'm not sure the guidance is.
It's a matter which of course the Welsh Government will be interested in, but their guidance is also statutory, and therefore we have to follow that as well. So if I can understand that may be a discrepancy, that's a matter for the courts, Councillor Gary. We are following the statutory guidance which we have to follow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allard.
Thank you, Chair. It's on the same area really. I can understand why the council can decide which is the nearest suitable school when the nearest school might be over capacity and full. Then the council can decide which is the next nearest school. I can understand that, but it doesn't get away from the fact that there is a responsibility to transport the child to the nearest school if there's capacity within it, and this sort of new policy so indicates it's a catchment that's all important, but I'm not sure if that balance within this transport policy is clear. There's a right for the child to have free transport to the nearest school, and does that also include schools in England? Because I can't see anywhere here within the policy that says that child has the right to transport to the nearest school, even in England, if that is their nearest school. A little bit of clarity on that, and you know, that's my problem with this policy. It's not clear. It's sort of driving people down the catchment road, which is almost ignoring the legislation to some extent. But your thoughts?
So I don't know who would like to come on this, but my understanding from as I read it is that we are moving our policy from the statement that said nearest suitable or catchment to nearest catchment only. So the key is the definition of a catchment. And if I'm correct, officers, please step in here. The catchments are actually quite clearly defined by the maps that are online. So if we're lining our transport to those catchment maps, in theory, it is quite clear. Look at the map. You can see where you live. You can see which school, primary school you'll get transport to, and thus that depends which high school you'll get transport to. And in theory, that is really, really clear. I don't know if you agree, Councillor Allard. But the question I think you're asking is, are those catchments right?
Well, so the child has lost the rights to have free transport to the closest school.
Yes.
Is it interpretation of what you're putting on it, Chair?
Yeah, that is my understanding, Councillor Allard, and I've spent a lot of time looking at those catchment maps, looking at my own ward and those further afield. And unfortunately, because of the shape of Powys, we don't have nice square catchments around each school. It's not nicely, it looks like a whole load of spread fried eggs, for want of a better word. They're very wibbly wobbly boundaries. And certainly in my area, what the result of this policy, and I don't know for your area, Councillor Allard, it may be the same, but there are children who live. So my ward, for example, is between two high schools. There are children who live 5 miles from the next high school, but because that's not their catchment, they will potentially be travelling 25 miles to school. And my question to officers is, how did that seem like a good idea? I think, is that what you're asking, Councillor Allard? Why we're going to subject children to travel further by denying them the opportunity to transport to their closest school?
Yeah. So the question is, has that right to travel to the closest school been denied or withdrawn? So if easiest example from my part of the world, Oswestry is closer than Llanfwllyn. So would the child still have the right for transport to Oswestry rather than to Llanfwllyn, or has that been denied altogether?
So I don't
Thank you.
know which officer can answer that.
John will
John?
be able to come.
Yeah, I get the argument for nearest because it's slightly confusing in the wording. But let's apply this in a literal sense, okay? And I'll use Llanbista Primary School as an example. Llanbista Primary School has got quite a wide catchment area. It goes to the north of the school, goes to the south of the school, it goes to the east of the school. If we were to apply nearest school only, when learners get to year 6, their nearest high school then becomes either Llanidloes to the east, Newtown to the north, Ysgol Calan Cymru to the south. There were critical comments from Estyn in our inspection back in 2018-19, I think it was, which criticised the transition arrangements because we were splitting small year groups up and sending them to, in small groups to different high schools. What we've tried to do through this policy is use what people understand as their catchment area for their primary school. And generally speaking, the primary school is, the properties have been mapped around their nearest primary school. And then we've just stitched the primary schools together in their clusters to form the catchment area of the high school. Therefore, we're trying to improve the transition arrangements for the learners in year 6. And we've tried to describe it to parents where we would expect their learners to transition to from primary school to secondary school. So that's the basis of choosing the catchment maps. I will refer back to the guidance around if your nearest school is in England, because I think, Councillor Aled, you might have a point there, but I will refer back to that. But again, what we're trying to describe here is if you go to school in Powys, we will transport you to a school in Powys as part of your transition arrangements. If parents wish to do something else, there is the appeals mechanism to do that.
Okay.
So you'd have to go through the appeals mechanism to get transport to your nearest school if it's not within the catchment designated by Powys.
Yes.
Even though legislation says that you're entitled to transport to your nearest school.
No, it says you're entitled to transport to the nearest suitable school, and we are saying the nearest suitable school is the catchment school, Councillor Aled.
So officers are deciding on behalf of the child and the family which is the nearest suitable school.
Council is deciding that. Cabinet in setting the policy, and Cabinet in setting the policy is deciding that, not officers.
Okay, sorry, Clive. Councillor Jackie is, since this is her policy, is deciding which is the nearest suitable school for every child in Powys.
Absolutely, upon recommendation from officers to deal with the sort of discrepancies which John has just indicated, Councillor Aled.
Yeah, and I understand the drive to link primary schools to high schools, but parents may have a different opinion, and then they possibly think they know best for their child, and rather than follow the catchment maps, they'd rather have their child transported to the nearest school, which might not be within the assigned catchment. And you're saying even though that's legal and that's what the duty on Powys to do, you would have to go through the appeals process to achieve that.
No, I didn't say that was the duty on Powys. Powys is under duty to transport to the nearest suitable school, and we are defining suitable school as the catchment school.
Okay, I can see now, Councillor Aled, that Councillor Jackie's got her hand up. Do you want to come in there, Jackie? And then, Aled, I'd like to move on. I think you've made that point very, very clearly, and I think we might come back to it, but I've got other hands up as well, if that's okay. But I'm going to bring Councillor Jackie in at this point.
Just to quickly say, Chair, that the transport policy is following the catchment maps. The catchment maps have already been decided. They've been through a process. They've also been through a second consultation process. So the catchment maps are very clear. All we're doing is aligning the school transport policy to the catchment maps. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Aled, if you don't mind,
I
I'm
agree with
going
you.
to move
Yeah.
on, but I will give you the chance to come back in if I'm conscious of the time because of this hour deadline. So, Margaret.
Can I just support Gareth's comments relating to the admissions and transport policy coming in at the same time? I say that because we have got parents who's their first introduction maybe to school. Now you're giving them two policies, and we've done this in the past. Well, I think it's time now to make sure that in the future we do it correctly and the two policies come together. And I would support Gareth's point that delay it till 2025.
Okay, thank you very much, Margaret, for those comments. Councillor Lucy. Sorry, Lucy, you're on mute.
Sorry, I just wanted to come back and remind everyone of the fact that in October 22, the entire council unanimously resolved to call on the school transport and education services to ensure that the current review of home school transport policy not only delivers greater clarity for pupils and students, which I can see we're trying to do, but their entitlement to free transport, but also supports greater parental choice of school, where this can be done without increasing the total school transport budget. And there is nothing in what we're talking about today that provides that greater parental choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Councillor Bryn.
Diolch yn iawn. Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate, I think more or less support what John Forsey was saying. In my particular ward, there are a school, I represent Llanwddyn, Pennant, you might know some of you, and then there's a school, Cwm Banwy and a school Pont Robert are slightly closer to several parts of that ward. Now, but to get to them, you have to go through forestry roads, over hills, and the natural flow of the community is in the opposite direction towards Llanwddyn and Pennant Fawr. And the more or less the point of the catchment is to define which is the more suitable school for the children in that area. And I think that if we consider the catchment as the definition of the most suitable school for those kids, it makes life relatively straightforward. And the catchment should be given the priority. I mean, personally, well, you know where I come from. How many, unless schools in England start providing bilingual education, how can they be defined as a suitable school for Welsh children? That makes it relatively straightforward. You know, you can't have an either and or. It should be the catchment or the nearest suitable school. Or the nearest suitable school and the catchment are one and the same thing, ideally, and that's what we're working towards. So it's relatively, it should be quite straightforward in that. If you consider the nearest suitable school and the catchment should ideally line up and be the same thing, and because otherwise you're going to have to run two buses to every area, and parents still have choices, but some choices are cheaper than others, and it doesn't stop parents from taking their kids to any school in Powys. It is at their own cost if they choose not to go to the nearest suitable school, which should be defined as that catchment. I don't think it needs to be that complicated. Sorry, there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bryn. A slightly different opinion there. Catherine, welcome.
Hi. Sort of following on from Bryn's comment about the catchment, I see and welcome the clarification on the provision for Welsh medium education, and obviously there is that I can't remember what the right word, but there is that ability for children to go to Welsh medium education with transport if they wish, but I can't see in the policy any similar clarification and obviousness for the right for a child to be transported for English medium education, should they wish. Now, it was highlighted in one of the comments from council, not from council, from the officers, that obviously they've made an emphasis on the Welsh, and that this is not to the detriment of the English medium education. But then elsewhere it says that the catchment school or the suitable school that they will be transported to is not based upon language of delivery of education. So I just would like to ask, what is the clarification on if a child was in a catchment school that was a Welsh medium school, whether they would also have the right to be transported to an English medium school if that was the parent's choice?
Who would like to come in and clarify that for us? I think it is in the policy, actually, isn't it? Marianne.
Yeah, thank you for that. If the catchments, and John will support me here, if the catchment school is a Welsh medium school, then that is the school for everybody in the catchment, and that's where transport would go. So parents, in that case, if parents didn't want Welsh medium provision in their catchment school, then they could choose an English medium school, but transport wouldn't be provided. In terms of the Welsh medium provision, for example, you've got areas in the county, such as, I'm going to pick on Hay. So Hay and Wye, no Welsh medium provision, and the nearest Welsh medium provision for somebody living in Hay would be in Brecon, in Ysgol y Banau in Brecon. But that child would then have to pass probably 3 schools to get to that Welsh provision. So the purpose of that policy is to support parents' access to Welsh medium provision, whereby their Welsh medium schools are in the minority in the council. So that's where that policy came from, and that was the change back in 2020, if I recall.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I understand this is why I welcome that aspect for supporting the bilingual education, Bryn. I know you don't like the use of the Welsh medium. I support that. I guess, obviously speaking slightly personally, coming from the north tip of Powys, where we have a border school that has the potential to be closing, with All Children's Catchment School then becoming a school where there is an intention that school will become a Welsh medium school, that there's a large area here where parents would choose an English medium education because they themselves are English, their children are coming into the education from crossing the border, where it is hard to pick up the Welsh language. It feels very, I don't like the fact that Powys are choosing what they consider to be suitable for a child, and actually taking away the parents' right to be able to have their child educated in an English medium. And I would even question whether you may start getting lawsuits that are coming to you from the human rights perspective of being allowed to be educated in a child's mother tongue.
Catherine, anyway, I will stop you there, because I think Marianne possibly wants to come back and clarify that, because there is a Welsh language, Welsh government have set the criteria, haven't they here? Marianne, do you want to come in? You'll probably explain it better than I.
No, I can understand Catherine's point. And the word discrimination gets thrown about quite a bit, doesn't it, around this policy. However, you know, it is the Welsh Government's aspiration to begin with to increase the number of Welsh speakers, and it's the Council's aspiration as well. So we do have our Welsh in Education Strategic Plan, and the transformation policy, which is adamant that we need to increase access to Welsh medium education. So in terms of choice, parents have choice. However, you know, and I think this is the piece of work that we really need to do as we move our Welsh medium schools along our schools along the language continuum, is to allay parents' fears of Welsh medium education, to show them what support there is out there, and there is support. And we know there are a number of parents from England, non-Welsh speaking parents, who attend, you know, our Welsh medium schools, particularly in Welshpool and in Dafydd Llwyd. So there is a lot of support out there, and I'm sure that's a conversation we'll be having as we go forward through this term. So
okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Aled, your hand is up. Did you want to come in with another question? You're on mute. Oh.
Yes, but it was just the in the policy under journey times 3.3, it talks about appropriate journey time, but it doesn't define.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Ali. That is a really good question, because I wanted to have that clarified as well in terms of what is an acceptable distance and journey time for how these if this whole policy hangs on the catchment schools, what is the accepted distance and journey time of a child into that catchment school? So who can answer that? Oh, John, you got your hand up.
Yeah, there is no definition from the Welsh Government. I think we used to say 45 minutes for primary school, hour for secondary school. And Sarah will correct. I don't believe there's anybody on a school bus for longer than an hour going to a mainstream school. There will be examples of learners who travel quite long distances in special educational needs provision simply because of the distance they travel to the provision. But generally, as a rule, I don't believe there's anybody on a bus longer than an hour on home to school transport currently.
Okay. And do we know what? Sorry, can I just come back and ask? Do we know what the furthest to travel any pupil in Powys has from their home to their catchment school in mileage?
That's a really good question. I'm just trying to think. It would probably be somewhere from the Brecon area down to Ystalyfera for Welsh provision.
And what is that in mileage? Guesstimate?
35-ish, 30 to 35 miles.
So that would be to a high school, would it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ali, do you want to come back there?
Yes, it's just the point that should not be laid out clearly in that section what you think an appropriate time is, rather than just chuck the phrase in.
Yeah.
So so there's greater understanding from a parent's point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Aled. Councillor Lucy.
Yeah, thank you. I've got 2 points. One is just following on from Catherine's. It actually says in the policy document, factors such as faith and language of instruction are not considered when deciding the nearest suitable school. Well, that's clearly not the case here, because whether it's English or Welsh is taken into account. And my other point was around the climate and nature implications. It suggests that implementing this policy will reduce the need for private car journeys, but where you've got parents who are who potentially could have had the choice of schools without any additional bus costs, and their children could be transported by bus. If that choice isn't available, the parents may well end up driving their car to the school that they want their children to go to, and therefore the private car journeys will increase, not decrease. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, no. So Sarah, hand up.
Thanks, Chair, and afternoon all. I just wanted to clarify one point, and that was that we bused the Welsh medium children in the south past a dual stream school. So again, that's parental choice. So we're paying to bus them to Ystalyfera, and that's passing Brecon High School, that is a dual stream school. So that was the first point, and I'm not sure where that is clarified in the policy. And the other point was back to John, that my children are on the bus to high school longer than 1 hour.
Okay, John or Sarah, can you answer that one? Because I understood in the policy that it was to the nearest suitable school, and that might be Welsh stream. I'd understood you couldn't bypass a Welsh stream school to go to a Welsh language school.
Sorry. I know where Sarah lives. I'm assuming your kids go to Brecon High School then, Sarah?
Yes, they do. And they do catch a connecting minibus too sometimes. So I appreciate that is we are out in the sticks.
Yeah. And you know, like I say, there's nearly 5,500 learners on transport. I cannot say that every single child has a journey under an hour. Generally, most learners do. Most learners have a lot shorter journey. So it's we are a very rural, geographically and demographically dispersed county. It's challenging, but we apply the general principles of no more than an hour.
And the question about busing children past a dual stream school to go to a single language school?
Yeah, I think this is probably one for my education colleagues, because I don't really wish to sort of speak on areas, but this is down to where they get admitted to.
Well, lucky for you, Anwen's got her hand up, John. So, Anwen, can you explain that one?
Thank you, Chair. Is it okay if I come in there? So diolch yn fawr iawn, thank you. Just to clarify around passing Brecon High School, which is a dual stream school, versus Ystrad, what we have there is there's only a minimum number of options available at Brecon, where Ystrad is a designated Welsh medium school where nearly all of the subjects would be offered to the medium of Welsh. So the parents there would have the right, would be able to argue that the provision, the breadth of provision through the medium of Welsh at Ystrad is far more advanced and more suitable for their children.
Can I come in as well?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so historically, the Brecon issue, the Brecon to Ystrad transport issue was the basis of an appeal, I believe, quite a few years ago, where parents won their appeal on the basis that the provision was broader than the provision available in Brecon's stream. With this policy, and there were questions raised around the Welsh medium, currently we do not differentiate in the policy between dual stream provision and Welsh medium designated provision. That's where we are at the moment. However, I think it's really important to say, as we go forward now, we're entering into a new Welsh education bill, which will have statutory definitions for schools depending on the type of language category they are. And that will provide far greater clarity when it comes to the provision of transport, because the categories of schools by language will be clearer and in law. So, you know, we will have to reflect the transport policy, and we'll probably have to revise and consult again as these statutory categories come into sort of reality.
Okay, I'm not sure if that answers Sarah's question, but it does raise for me another question based on what Catherine was saying, that it sounds like if you feel the nearest dual stream school doesn't offer adequate standards or breadth of provision, that you can appeal to go to an alternative school. But if you felt the nearest English language school didn't offer the best quality, you can't appeal to go to the next better classification school.
You could appeal.
You could appeal, right?
You could
okay.
appeal, and it would be, and it would be heard on a case-by-case basis, wouldn't it? I'm just saying that the Brecon Ystrad one was an appeal quite a few
Based
years
on
ago.
that case.
Yeah.
Right, very specific to that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Graham, you've been very patient there, waiting with your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to take us back a little bit, if I may, and support something that Catherine came in to say about the English parents of English children having to pay for the costs of transport. A lot of people have pointed out to me that they feel that it is an act of discrimination, and I know that one of our officers mentioned that, but I thought we really brushed it aside a little bit without much consideration there, because pupils wishing to learn through the medium of English language, in my opinion, I think are being discriminated against. You know, we have examples of I can quote Lambercranion, for instance, where once that school is up and running, English-speaking pupils will have to pay for their transport to the nearest schools if they wish to, at either Welshpool or Newtown. And while we've identified that following Welsh Government guidelines to promote the use and access to the Welsh language, should not be an additional transport cost to those parents wishing their children to continue to be taught in the English language. And if we check the impact assessment, it does highlight the fact there that we are creating an issue. So my question is really, have we taken into consideration that the possibility of this proposal facing legal challenges is a reality? And what is that cost likely to be to this authority? Because as Catherine mentioned, I think there are going to be human rights issues involved here. I can see Bryn shaking his head, but we've had arguments in the past that Welsh-speaking pupils were being discriminated against, but this switches this in the other direction, and that's not correcting the issue. So that's my question, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. So, Marianne, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, just to clarify, the change to the Welsh medium element. So, we promote transport for Welsh medium for pupils wishing to have Welsh medium provision to their closest Welsh medium school. So it's not their closest school. This has been the policy since 2020. So we've been operating. This isn't new to this change in policy. This is already operating in power since whenever the last one came in 2020. Just to clarify that's the situation. We haven't had any challenges in that time around this.
None at all.
None at all.
Okay.
Well, yes, but we're changing the situation now.
No, we're not.
We're not. It's the same. It's the same.
Yes, we are, because we're forcing pupils here who live in a town like Llanfairpwllgwyngyllgogerynion who don't wish to be taught in the medium of Welsh. We're now forcing them to seek another school, and they will have to pay for that. At the moment, they don't have to pay to be taught at Llanfair School.
But that's the situation anyway, isn't it? So, that's the situation we've been working with. As we go forward now and we change our secondary schools to become Welsh medium schools, what I'm saying is that the policy at some point will have to change to reflect the big change in our secondary provision.
Well, I don't follow that, but thank you.
Okay. Councillor John Yeomans.
Hi, obviously this is maybe a bit specific, but I think it is a pattern that I've seen with other residents. But a resident around here in our ward contacted me the other day. He lives in Aberhaves, but I think from what I could gather, I don't know the exact distance, but he's somewhere near halfway between Ysgol Rhywbechen and Ysgol Dafydd Llwyd. He and his wife have chosen Ysgol Dafydd Llwyd, and he said there's a 16-seater minibus passing the end of right by his house every day with 2 kids on it. And then there's a trail of parents driving in right behind all the way. And he's even said he would pay. And I'm pretty new to this, as you know. So is there a way around that? Because the perception he was straight in about carbon and the council sort of aims for net zero by 2030. And it just looks dreadful environmentally. And it just seems nuts to me. But maybe somebody can explain it. Thanks.
Thank you, John. So the other John Forsey.
Yeah, I guess that comes down to the catchment area. That's why they're refused. If they went on the bus to Rhywbechen, they would get transport. It's not the council increasing the carbon footprint, it's the parents' choice by taking them to another school. So, I'm fairly comfortable to say that they could have gone to Ysgol Rhywbechen, they would have been provided with transport. They've chose to do something different.
So you don't think it's acceptable that he said he would pay for him to go on the bus that's driving past with 14 empty seats every day? You don't think that's perception wise? I would have thought for the council that looks horrendous to me. I can understand what you're saying, but I don't agree with it basically, because
so John Yeomans, I think John Forsey, can you explain the vacant seat situation? Because there used to be a policy, didn't there, whereby parents could pay for vacant seats on school buses.
Yeah, so the vacancy policy is such that we will provide, parents can make use of a spare seat if they are going to their catchment school and they are under the qualifying distance. It doesn't allow for parents to choose another bus to go to a different catchment area. That's in the current policy. We've had a bit of a hiatus with the PSVAR regulations, which we're almost coming towards the end of 2026. I hope that will no longer be an issue. But at the moment, the policy is, and it will remain the same, that we will provide transport if your learners don't meet the qualifying distance to your catchment school.
So that's never going to be the case that any vacancies can be filled by. I don't want to dwell on it, but there's lots of people, by the sound of things, all trailing behind various buses into their schools.
Yeah, what we might see is a 16-seat minibus with 2 kids on it going past after half-fest. By the time it gets into school, it could be 16 learners on it.
Well, he tells me there's 2 all the way, so he tells me. But it'd be cheaper to pay him to take the other 2 kids, wouldn't it?
This is parental choice, isn't it? The council doesn't have any obligation to provide transport for parental choice.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think you've explained the point there on the carbon footprint then is really the carbon footprint of the parent as opposed to the school policy. But I think that brings into question what's been said earlier, I think by Councillor Alid, about the catchments of the primary schools. You know, if you have that map of the catchments of the primary school and overlay it with the maps of the catchments of the high school, there will inevitably be some pupils travelling further from home to their catchment high school than their nearest high school. And that is a policy then whereby the council is increasing that child's carbon footprint and its mileage and travel time to school, isn't there? So I just wonder why the council isn't considering making the rule that you go to your catchment high school, as is this policy suggesting, but with the option in some cases of pupils choosing their nearest school if the mileage is significantly different.
I'll try and answer your point there, Councillor Angela. I suppose if we use the Llanbista example again, we'd have a bus of high school learners going down to Llandrindod, we'd have a bus of high school learners going across to Llanidloes, and a bus of learners going down to Newtown. So I'm not entirely sure I understand that we are increasing our footprint where we can put the same numbers onto one vehicle.
I can give you another example then where the catchment line goes down the middle of Nantmall, where half those children would come to Raider, that's their catchment primary school. The other half would go to Crossgates, that's their catchment primary school. But the Crossgates school go to Llandrindod and the Raider school go to Llanidloes. But those children living next door potentially to each other, albeit on farms. One child is travelling to Llandrindod 4 miles away, and the other child is travelling to Llanidloes 23 miles away. So that's because that divide has to be somewhere, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that is reciprocated across the county and other catchment boundaries. And my question again is, would it not make sense in those boundary cases where there is an option for those families, those children, to travel to their nearest school, as there will be transport going that way anyway?
The catchment areas are consulted on and are set by the school service. We are simply applying them to the school transport policy.
Okay. I've got no more hands up. Has anybody got any further questions for clarity? Councillor Gary.
Yeah, it's all right. And I was about to leave, but I thought I'll throw it in there now. Can the officers just explain? So currently, the catchment maps that we can see online are dated 2025. Stuff that's going on in terms of school admissions and transport policy now aren't yet using those new catchments maps. Is that correct? And therefore there's a set of slightly different catchment maps out there that current policy and appeals processes are aligning to. Fairly clear that we've consulted on the new ones, 2025, they come in, and that's what the transport policy is then trying to align to. But are we in a little bit of a hiatus period at this moment in time between the different catchments?
And I think you've described quite eloquently there, Councillor Gary, where the confusion comes from parents, because is it their nearest school? Is it their catchment school? But it has been defined in this school admissions book, a sort of natural flow from what primary school to what high school. So yeah, there has been this not tension but confusion, which this policy is aiming to resolve by saying this is your catchment primary school, this is your catchment secondary school, therefore making that journey a bit easier for parents to understand.
Yeah, but currently we don't have that clarity, so we're using, let's say, different catchment maps at the moment than what's published online.
The catchment maps online will be used from 2025.
Yeah, okay, I guess, yeah, it's okay. Thank you. I think that gives me the clarity I was looking for. I am going to have to go. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gary. Appreciate that. You've got another meeting. Councillor Gareth E. Jones. You're on mute, Gareth.
Apologies. Just picking on point you made about that example of Nantwell. I assume at the moment we are transporting the children who will be in the catchment of Llanidloes to Llanrindod. And therefore, won't we have double transport then? We'll have those children who are already being transported to Llanrindod as is their nearest school. And then we're proposing we're going to transport children to Llanidloes, therefore increasing the costs. And what's the implication then when the children who are currently in school, their closest school, who've got younger siblings, and mum and dad want those younger siblings to go to the same school, but we were saying, well, you can't because your catchment school, well, you can go to your nearest school, but you won't get transport because your catchment school has changed.
Yeah. Sarah, you've got your hand up. Can you explain that one for us, please?
I will. We do currently have transport that operates from Rhayader Primary School into Llanrindod. We have transport that takes students for Welsh medium provision into Bilth, and for the majority of pupils, we're transporting them from Rhayader Primary School to Llanidloes High School for both Welsh and English medium provision. Rhayader has been a school that selected to be within the cluster of Llanidloes High School. And I think there's historical evidence to suggest that those living in Rhayader itself and attending Rhayader Primary School had a choice, that they could go to either the nearest secondary school or Llanidloes High School. I think for the majority, we're seeing that the parents are electing for their children to go to Llanidloes. Therefore, the school itself elected to be within the cluster of Rhayader High School. of Llanidloes High School. Therefore, that was the catchment that was selected. It doesn't prevent any family from appealing the decision that actually the direction of travel moving forward will be from 2025 to Llanidloes for secondary provision. We will have a situation where those students that were previously entitled will continue to be entitled to the school that they were going to. So there'll be a transitional period where we may well have transport operating in different directions. But we have to consider as we move forward that transport will reduce. The number of vehicles that we've got travelling in opposite directions to different schools will hopefully reduce, because those families will then their children will be attending their catchment school. So we hopefully will be able to phase out the transport that we've got at the moment that would be in effect duplicated going in opposite directions. We can't remove current entitlement, but moving forward, we will be using the catchment maps.
So what happens when, like happened in the past, when I can remember when Franksbridge, which is a school in my area, at one stage the pupils were transported to Bilth High School. Then the parents said they preferred Llanrindod, so the council changed it to transport it to Llanrindod. Then they changed it to transport it back to Bilth. What happens then when the parents from Rhayader say they've got a change of management in Llanidloes? We don't like that. We want to go to Bilth, or we want to go to Llanrindod.
But that
the closest school is that's not going to change, is it? You know, from I live in Aberystwyth, and my closest high school is going to be Bilth, unless somebody removes the school from Bilth. You know, and it sounds like we've got a policy where, with parental pressure, we may be able to change the catchment.
Sorry, Councillor Gareth, I'm not entirely sure that's a transport-related matter.
No, it's not a transport-related matter, John. It's an admission matter, which then has a knock-in impact on transport.
It does, but I'm going to stop that conversation there because I think John is right. It's not a transport matter, and actually it's not as simple as that to change your catchment. But anyway, I'm going to bring Councillor Allard in, and then I'm going to stop. We're on 12 minutes past 1. We're going to cut off at 1:15, and we need to come up with some recommendations. So very quickly, Councillor Allard.
Thank you, Chair. It's following on from Gareth. I think it's up to the head and the governors of a primary school to decide which school they want that relationship with, if they want to be in a catchment of X.
Yeah, and there absolutely, Alid, and there is a process for that schools have to follow through the admissions. But again, that's not specifically relevant to this policy in its wider thing now. So I would like as members to have a think about everything we've heard. I've got no further hands up now for questions on this policy. So we need to come up with some recommendations. Are we happy, members, to stay online once this meeting cuts out, just to draw those together? Just for 1 minute. I know you're all busy in time. Okay. Yep. That's good. So we'll do that at 1:15 when the meeting finishes. In that case, we've got 2 minutes. Does anybody have any question they'd like to ask? Alid, your hand is still up, so I'll hand back to you.
Apologies, I hadn't taken it down, but I would like clarity on who decides, because that causes a real issue when you talk about catchment being the main criteria in school
the policy. Yeah. So in those circumstances, Anwen, would that be one for you? If a school wanted to change its catchment, what's the process?
Thank you very much. There's 2 elements here. They would have to come to the Director of Education, and then we would take it through the consultation process of the admissions round. So it would take a long time to come through the ranks. So it isn't something that, as a head teacher or the school, I can't suddenly decide I'm going to cluster or catchment X tomorrow. It is something that would have to undergo full consultation.
Yeah. So it's not schools can't just swap and change at their heart's desire. No.
Because there's massive implications, isn't there?
Yeah. Okay. Sarah.
Sorry, just a quick query from my perspective. I just want Anwen or Marianne just to correct me if I'm wrong. But when Councillor Allard mentioned the catchment maps and also access to out-of-county schools being the nearest, and they're obviously not included, can I just clarify with Anwen and Marianne that actually when we're looking at the school admissions policy, it doesn't actually make any reference to out-of-county schools?
I don't believe so, does it, Sarah? Unless it's an arrangement with us and the local authority, isn't it? Because there are some local authorities, such as Ystafera, where we've got actually an arrangement.
I don't think it's referenced in the admissions policy. When it comes to the catchment maps, students that are attending the Welsh medium primary school in Brecon, they are shown as within the catchment of Brecon. However, we do have an arrangement where students are entitled to attend the out-of-county school in Ystafera, and that I think is a little bit challenging when we come to the catchment maps, because the catchment maps are about schools in Powys. So it's just for clarification.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Sarah, last word to you before we finish.
There is reference to Ystafera in the admissions arrangements towards the end, Sarah.
Right, okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So it is 1:15 now. We are scheduled to finish. I know that officers have got and members have got other meetings to go to. So I thank you all very much for coming and for keeping your questions as concise as you could. Thank you to officers for answering them. So we'll just go offline now and just do those recommendations. So thank you all very much.